Hey everyone, welcome back to Upside Down Data. Today I want to talk about Bitcoin and whether or not we're seeing a meaningful turn in the trend. If you like the content, remember to subscribe to the channel, give the video a like, and follow us on Twitter. But a lot of updates, better indicators, and more over there. So if you've been following Bitcoin over the last few days, you'll have noticed that we've put in 4 consecutive green days to the upside. Now we haven't actually closed today, but we're just an hour or so away from the close as I record now. It seems quite likely we're going to close 4 green days in a row. Now, a lot of people, when they look at that, they just say, well, who cares, right? Because, we're coming up towards local resistance. We've been rejected from this area once, twice, why not 3 times and just move back down? And I think that's a very reasonable way of looking at this chart in isolation. But there's some other indicators, some other data from indicators we have here on the channel that paint a slightly different picture about what's happening right now versus what we saw before. And I want to talk about that here. And they might suggest that maybe this is actually a meaningful move to the upside. So I want to talk about that here. So let's talk about the market direction classifier, or MDC. So this is an indicator that we have here on the channel that basically tries to capture broad macro trends. So when you're in a bull market or these big moves to the upside, you're generally speaking going to be in the green. And then in bear markets, downtrends, you're going to spend the vast majority of your time down in the red, with only kind of these little relief rallies kind of popping up over top. And this yellow line is the critical level. This is the level at which the MDC says that price needs to be above it to stay bullish. And if it's below it, that's more bearish. And generally speaking, when you break down below this level, you see more downside. When you break above it, you see some upside, even if it's relatively short-lived. So I want to talk about where we are right now, because I think that's what everyone cares about. So let's zoom in on more recent price action. So I'm zooming in on price action from January 1st of 21 all the way through today. What you can see is that we've just so peaked our head above the critical value. Now this hasn't turned green yet because we haven't closed green yet. That hasn't happened quite yet. But this will turn green as soon as we close. We're about to close above the MDC critical level, and specifically that level right now is at 20,778. We're trading up above 21,000, so unless we dump back down there before the close in about an hour, we're going to be closing green most likely. And the reason why that's notable is that is a precursor for being bullish, right? With every single kind of big uptrend we see, you first have to go ahead and close above the MDC to get excited. Now, it doesn't mean that it's guaranteed or anything like that. You can have these little blips like we had back here, or these shorter-lived rallies that come back down. But even if it is just a blip, oftentimes at least a little bit of upside will come after, although in this case it was not particularly meaningful. But the reason why I think it's useful to pay attention is that, oftentimes when the MDC flips green, you can get movements that are like this. And, if we go back and we flip to the longer time frame, we can see that you can get these big moves start to form when you come out of these bearish times, or like 2019, for example. So do I think this means that we're going to see something like 2019 where we go ripping off to the upside, or even something like the summer of 21? No, not necessarily. But I do think it's totally reasonable to think that with this close above this, it's possible we're setting the stage for at least some kind of relief rally, even if that isn't too extreme, right? And with so much down recently, kind of this down only price action, price in markets tends to only go one direction for so long before getting some mean reversion back to the other side. And I put out a video the other day talking about how the narrative around inflation might be changing a little bit, where the possibility of peak inflation is becoming more and more of a possibility, and the markets might now be looking towards other things as being more the things that are driving them, more so inflation fears, more so deflationary forces, which then changes the narrative that's been driving Bitcoin down ever since November. So I think it's totally possible to expect that with a change in the narrative, it's possible for the market to actually start acting a little bit differently, even if it isn't super long-lived, right? The thing we have to watch in the more macro sense is what happens to the stock market in the case of impending possible recession. If earnings, for example, in different companies start falling off a cliff, that could drag the stock market down, and since Bitcoin and the rest of crypto has been so correlated with stocks, it could go with it. But if we're in this kind of transition zone, it seems possible that we could get at least a short-term relief rally out of here. Now, again, I'm not going to be making any bold, strong predictions saying that that's guaranteed by any means, but But the fact that we're starting to see this now, we're starting to see this behavior that frankly we really just haven't seen ever since, in the most major way since March of this year, where we did get a decent move back to the upside, going up all the way almost to 50K on this move up here. Is about 48K that we topped out up here. To see some kind of a move back up into the mid 20Ks, mid to upper 20Ks would be totally reasonable, right? It wouldn't be completely shocking to be able to move back up, at least temporarily, even if that's just part of a bigger downtrend that will then end up continuing. And the MDC is not the only thing that's suggesting signs of positive movement or a positive trend. We can also look at the Trend Confidence Indicator, or TCI. So this is a different indicator we have here on the channel. This one's intended to be a lot more kind of twitchy. It's supposed to be more early in catching trend reversals, so basically a leading indicator. And so you can see this. So I've zoomed this one in again so we can see what's happening with recent price action. But you can see that happening. I've talked about this a lot before, this indicator, how it called early the top back in the spring of 21. Look at how much time it was spending in the red before we even had this crash, basically an early warning of that. And then likewise for this trend reversal in the summer, spending a lot of time in the green even before we'd actually hit the reversals, basically giving us an early warning a trend reversal might be on the horizon. And more recently, it's been behaving in an interesting way. So it actually also did that back here in this move from the low 30Ks up to up here in 48K. I should also clarify here, the yellow here now is the price of Bitcoin, and the green and red oscillation here is the TCI value. It ranges, it's 0 is kind of this cutoff between bearishness and bullishness, and then it ranges up and down. And then basically the higher value it is, the more confident you can be that you're in an uptrend is the idea. And so we might just at the very least be doing something like we did back here, where we put in a local bottom back here in the low 30Ks, soon after it broke positive on the TCI, and then ended up having some reasonable upside before crashing down. We've seen a similar thing happen here, where it was actually with this move up here, the TCI started to think, hey, this is looking like it might be the start of an uptrend here, and now it's actually reaching an even higher level. It's actually more confident in the uptrend now than it was back here, even though the price is at a lower level. So again, it is thinking that Bitcoin moving to the upside is very much a plausibility right here. And the TCI is actually, again, with the TCI, it also produces a critical value. So here it's actually watching a little below 19K. It's kind of its cutoff between bearishness and bullishness. So it would actually be still bullish on Bitcoin to a lower price level than the MDC was. So now we're seeing confluence between the TCI and the MDC. The TCI is green, and so is the MDC. And so in cases where that happens, like in the summer back here, and like in the summer back here, that can lead to notable upside. So obviously, as I said before, I'm not necessarily predicting us to do this, go on a rip back to the upside of a well over 100% move to the upside or anything like that. But at least short-term upside seems very much possible and plausible. Now again, this could be wrong. We could just end up chopping back down here more. This could be a fake out. We don't really know if this is going to hold up. But I think it's important to be flexible in our mindset, right? I think everyone's been conditioned to such an extreme degree recently in this bear market that any moves to the upside should just be faded, that we're going to fall back down to the downside. Because the narratives driving markets are starting to shift as well, I think it's not completely unreasonable to think that markets might start acting a little bit differently from the way that they've been acting ever since November. And the other thing that we can look at is that, assuming we don't go into some massive crash in the stock market immediately, assuming that historical trends at least stay somewhat predictive, our risk indicator, the upside downside potential indicator, or UDPI, is thinking that right now is quite a favorable risk reward proposition. We're down below -4, at these kind of local or these kind of extreme bottoming points in the market. You only really see these levels at bear market kind of bottoms, very much low risk areas. And so that's another reason why, seeing some move back to the upside, sort of like we saw back here, tracking back up closer to 0, could very much be in the cards. It's very much possible for us to start mean reverting in that way. So again, I'm not going to go out here and make a strong prediction or say this is guaranteed by any means, and obviously none of this is financial advice. You should form your own opinions. But I did just want to make note of this, right? Because when you see these indicators start to flash, it's time to take notice, at least from a historical perspective, that when the MDC flips into the green, especially from these really low risk levels, that can lead to pretty explosive moves to the upside. You know, we've seen that before. And also the TCI can act as this early indicator. It already did that. Maybe now it's heralding some bigger move. And from the UDPI's perspective, we are very much in a low risk zone. So again, you know, this could age terribly. It could be the case we get a week from now and we're down 10% on Bitcoin or more, and this is all just ridiculous. But I do just want to bring this to people's attention, right? Because, you know, it's very possible that it will go a different way from the way it's been going all this time. And I think just having this in mind, having an open mind, is useful in these times in the market. All right, if you like the content, remember to subscribe to the channel, give the video a like, and follow us on Twitter. Put a lot of updates, better indicators, and more over there.